Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to your Ruby Live event. My name is Eric Wynkoop, and I'm the Director of Culinary Instruction here at Ruby. And I'm also one of your chef instructors in the courses. We've got a small, tight-knit team here, just 4 members right now. And it's very nice to see all of you today. Um, More specifically, I want to welcome you to my office hours. This is an opportunity for you to ask food and cooking related questions, and then for me to do my best to provide answers to those queries. And, as always, I want to start out with a couple of items. And the first one is you are welcome to participate more directly by sharing a question or a comment. You can do so by typing in that question or comment in the dialog box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And that'll make its way into the queue. And then you can also see that with each individual question that's listed, you'll see a heart-shaped icon. And if you want that particular question answered sooner than later, you can click on that heart-shaped icon and it'll bump it up in priority. Okay. Otherwise, as you can see, we have a number of questions already pre-populated. So, I will go ahead and jump in and start responding to these. All right. And yeah, I've got a bit of a cough, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I end up hitting mute to cough or to take a little drink of beverage here. But otherwise, let's have some fun. So the first item is from Jimmy, who says, "What are some advanced techniques or tips you recommend for achieving perfect pan-fried chicken with a golden crust every time?" Okay. So a couple of key words that jump out at me, and that would be perfect and every time. So I'll begin by saying that you, the cook, have control over that. And that's going to be based upon your practice, your understanding of the method, and your refinement of the techniques that go into this process. But otherwise, let me share a few thoughts that come to mind. And, when it comes to, frying something in oil, oil, frying is a dry heat cooking method. Okay. And so fundamentally what it's doing is removing moisture, at least from the surface of that item. So in the case of deep frying or pan frying, it's customary to protect the outer layer of the food item with a coating. And that coating is going to be a batter or it could be breading. Okay. And so like other dry heat methods, the oil is pulling moisture out, okay, of that outer layer. The result is this coagulation of proteins. Sugars are affected, colors darken, flavors deepen, and as it dries out, it gets more crispy. Okay, so that's the basic mechanics at work here. In order to enhance some of the oh so desirable crunchy quality of fried goods, if we're working with a batter, okay, use a cold batter. And it's also, common to use carbonated water. That fizzy action in there tends to lend to the texture of the finished product in a positive way. And so also introduce to this blend some cornstarch. And, you can use rice starch, rice flour. It tends to be a little tougher, I find, but cornstarch is nice. blended maybe 2 parts versus 1 part wheat flour. The wheat flour is added to promote the browning of this outer protective layer, whether it's the batter or, well, I guess in this case it's the batter, because cornstarch doesn't brown so nicely. Okay, it tends to remain a pretty light or even white color. So as a procedure, dredge the food item. In this case, you're asking about chicken. Dredge that item in cornstarch and then dip that into your batter, again, which is based on cornstarch and wheat flour plus a cold carbonated water. And then that goes into the frying oil. And then the oil is, it's customarily at about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That could inch up a little bit if you prefer, through experimentation, maybe 375, but 350 degrees Fahrenheit is a solid place to start. I'm also going to mention that a double frying process will provide a crispier outcome. And this is where you will follow the procedure that I just mentioned in terms of dredging, in the dry cornstarch, dipping that product into the cold batter that you made, into the oil. Again, 350 is a good place to start. Some people may work with a temperature slightly lower than that at 325, but you can experiment, okay? And then you're going to cook that until the item is just starting to take on some color, okay? You'll pull that out, let that cool down on a rack, and once it's cool, you'll fry it a second time. And so again, oil at 350 degrees is typically fine. Again, some cooks prefer to bump that up a little bit to 375, but you'll introduce your food product to the oil and then finish it by gauging the color development. Okay, there's not going to be any issues with doneness on the inside, but you want to look at the color. And then pull the product out when it reaches that deeper golden color. Place it on a rack again for any drainage of excess oil. Avoid paper towels because there's a tendency to trap any steam, which will only lend the softening of the crust that you're trying to make. Okay, so that's an approach for a batter fried item. Now, the other protective outer coating is going to be breading. And, I like to use panko, which is a Japanese style breading, but really you can use whatever breading that you like. In the case of panko, it is available in different coarsenesses from fine all the way up to some, extra large sort of individual pieces. For a crispier finish, use a larger panko. In terms of coarseness, if you have access to only one type of panko, then of course that's going to be fine. And so some things you can try out, okay, and these are all standalone techniques, or ideas here. You can combine them however you want in terms of your own experimentation, but take a look at these singularly first. And understand them as standalone processes, okay? So the first one is to toast the panko itself before it's used in the breading procedure, okay? And so you'll add, that can be done very lightly with some oil in a pan or in the oven. If it's in the oven, you got to keep an eye on it, avoid burning around the edges. It needs to be stirred from time to time to even out the browning. And that's going to further dry out that product and make it, even crispier than usual, even before you've applied it to your chicken. Okay. And then once you go through your cooking process, it's going to continue to get even crispier. Okay. And just as a review here, the standard breading procedure is a three-step procedure. The first one is to dredge the product in a dry flour. In this case, we can use cornstarch. Step two is to apply a moist coating, and traditionally it's beaten egg, but it could certainly be something else. If you're using animal-based products, it could be buttermilk as a traditional item. If you're using plant-based items, it could be almond milk or soy milk, for example. And then the idea is to moisten the outside of that item so that for step three, which is to apply the breading will adhere, to the item. And so this is where you apply your panko, or at least in my case, that's my choice. Take a moment to kind of press down with your fingers like this on the item to really get the breadcrumbs to adhere to the surface and to adhere evenly. Okay. So in terms of handling the breading itself, a couple of ideas. Number one is to consider moistening the breadcrumbs very lightly. You can use a misting sort of a spray bottle, and the tension between the light moisture on the breadcrumbs and that hot oil creates this crispiness on the surface. The other avenue here is a double breading procedure. Okay. And you're going to go through the standard breading procedure, but you're going to loop through step 2 and 3 again. So you're applying a moist outer coat and then applying panko again for a thicker and crispy outer coating. Okay, so those are some ideas. I hope you'll give them a try. Thank you. Okay, next up is from Jay. Welcome back, Jay. It's been a long time since seeing you. Hope you've been well. Jay's question is, do you have any tips on how to save a dish that is too salty or too spicy? Okay. The quick answer here is to stretch it out with something neutral. And of course, it's going to depend upon what you've made. That's a little salty or spicy, but if you can add a neutral starchy item, such as potatoes in some form or rice in some form, then you can kind of neutralize the concentration by bulking up this product. That's really the way to approach this. Another avenue here is to save what you have. You're going to put it in a container, hold it in the freezer or the fridge if that's appropriate. Label it so you know what it's all about. And the next time you come around to make this preparation, use this highly salted or spicy concoction as some of the seasoning itself, right? And so it's just another way, I guess, maybe timing wise, right, to stretch out this product, with some additional neutral base product. Again, whether it's potatoes or grains or pasta or something else. Okay. But I would say for sure, if you can try to save the product, that's number one. I'm a big fan of reducing food waste where possible, and especially if you have all this great spices and other goodness in there, it'd be nice to try to utilize it in some fashion. Thank you. All right, next up from Maria, is there a yeasted pizza dough in the whole food plant-based realm that works well in general? I've got a recipe here, and I think Patrick either posted it, or it looks like maybe Patrick will post it here momentarily. And it's just a link to one of our all-purpose pizza dough recipes. And, it's plant-based, in terms of not having eggs in it, for example. It's got, oil and other things that are safe, so to speak, within the whole food plant-based rule book. So give it a try. There are certainly other versions of pizza dough, whether it's online, and we might even have a couple others in the Ruby library. But give this one a try first, and see how you can understand it and control it, and enjoy it, and then even make some modifications to it once you get to that point. Okay, thank you. And yeah, the link is up for you. There you go. All right, Richard asks, hi Eric, can you tell me if TVP, textured vegetable protein, is a good or bad ingredient to use on a whole food plant-based diet? Okay, so good or bad? Well, yeah, these absolute terms are sometimes difficult for me to work with. So let's find some middle ground, and let's just talk about this product. And ultimately, I'll ask you to make that decision for your particular situation. Okay. And so TVP, at least as I know it, is a soy-based product. So concern number one would be that if a person has any aversion to soy, this is not a product for them. But let's see, I guess another shortcoming of TVP is that, it is a processed product. You've got your soybeans that go through some various steps of processing before you end up with this textured vegetable protein, which is this nice meaty, textured, but plant-based product that can be added to soups and stews and casseroles and stir fries and that sort of thing. It certainly is convenient, and provides satisfying toothsomeness, which can be difficult to otherwise replicate in plant-based foods. So those are a couple of pluses with TVP. Now, I'm going to talk about a related item here, but I'm going to get back to the topic at hand here, Richard. So bear with me. And what I want to talk about here is, and this is for everybody, right? This idea of developing your personal food philosophy. Okay. And if we think about, other aspects of our personal lives, whether it's our, religious or spiritual values, or what we believe about education, the way that, we conduct ourselves around work ethic, and so on and so forth, right? These become very personal, topic areas that identify our values and our belief set. And most of us, have developed these values around these example topics that I just mentioned, but many of us have not developed a solid set of values and beliefs around food, and just what it is that we believe about food, how we want to conduct ourselves around food. Eating, after all, is, it's arguably, the most personal and intimate act that we perform multiple times every day. At least that's the case for most of us. And yet, we don't have this solid path that we're on. And so I encourage each of you to think about what it is that you believe around food. And this, would bump up against the place of origin, seasonality, who's producing it, i.e. the care, right, of the people producing your food, their well-being, right? What does that mean to you? And how does your purchasing decision affect those people, right? And of course, there's nutrition, right? Is it animal-based? Is it plant-based? Is it mostly plant-based? And so on and so forth. And am I going to be a hard line about being plant-based? Or am I going to be gracious about food when somebody invites me to their house and it's not exactly plant-based? So these are all considerations that you get to make. They're all individual and highly personal topics. And So with that sort of a thing, comes this idea of processed foods. And so, Richard, you mentioned whole food plant-based diet. The foods that we eat, even if they're mostly whole foods, are probably processed even a little bit most of the time. And so things lie in a spectrum. Um, so hence I hesitate to identify something as good or bad, because there's a lot of possibilities for a lot of different people in the middle here. And this is where the interesting answers lie. Okay. So, I would encourage you to think about number one, what goes into manufacturing TVP? What is it in the end, when you consume that product? And do you want to consume it? If so, how much or how frequently do you want to consume it? I think those are all relevant questions that are part of this greater food philosophy theme that we're talking about right now. Okay. So in other words, TVP, I think, could be fine for some people, but others might avoid it. And you get to find out what's best for you by, investigating, these different products, and also where you stand on these things. It's a great process. Hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Next up from Sue, is there a best way to cut and store fresh greens and purchased bagged salad so it won't get brown and slimy? Cut with stainless steel or plastic knife, store in glass with a tight lid. I'm tossing too much mushy salad. Okay, yes. So let's talk about this. This is interesting. This is a problem not only for home cooks, but for commercial kitchens, professional kitchens. This bumps up into the idea of food waste, one's budget, one's food philosophy, and probably other, intersections as well. But so first of all, it's important to purchase a quantity that is best for your usage rate. Okay, usage rate is going to be based upon, of course, the number of people that you're feeding each day, and just how much of that product you're going to use in each of the preparations that you might make each day. So, one of the biggest issues that I see just across the board, whether it's a professional kitchen or, at home for each of us, is that we buy too much food. And, I find myself going down this path sometimes when I'm drawn to a place like Costco that have these gargantuan packages of things. Some things have a long shelf life, so maybe it's not a problem, except when I find myself eating more of it than usual because there's so much sitting around. But in the case of perishable goods, those things will end up in the garbage can, or hopefully the compost pile to give it some sort of life, in its next cycle. So purchasing is going to be number one. Number two is going to be the temperature, of your refrigerator, and just kind of keep an eye on things to see that it's not too warm or too cold. Usually temperatures in the upper 30s, lower 40s Fahrenheit for produce items is going to be good. But some produce items, call for an even warmer temperature than that. Some items are pretty delicate. Now, keep in mind that some of these salad greens, in terms of temperature, don't necessarily perfectly align with the perfect temperature for, soy milk or dairy milk or something else, which would call for an even lower temperature. So, sometimes it's difficult. Okay, I'll say that. Now, the other thing is if you're buying prepackaged these mixes, like a mesclun mix from the store, Keep in mind that each of these lettuce types has its own shelf life. And in each of these blends, especially these red leaf lettuce varieties I've noted, they have a very short shelf life. And so it's important to try to find the freshest quality product, of course, but I also understand that that's easier said than done, okay, because you just don't always know how long it's been in transit to the store or how long it's been on the store shelf itself. Um, so we got to use the product as quickly as we can. That's just, do what we can. That's in our realm of control. But understand that each of these items in a mix or a blend will have its own shelf life. Again, with these red pigmented items, for some reason, having a pretty short shelf life in my experience. Now, one thing that will help all this is however you store the product, whether it's in a plastic bag or a glass container, and either one can be fine, is to add a towel. The towel could be a paper towel, it could be a cloth towel. But if you can slide, let's say, a paper towel into the plastic bag, and it might be one on top and one on bottom with all the lettuce product in the middle, those towels will absorb excess moisture, and that will cut down on the rot that could set in, and thereby extend the shelf life of the product. Okay. I find if I put it into these lettuce items into a hard container, if I lay a cloth over the top, again, it could be a cloth towel or it could be a paper towel. Either one can work fine, but it'll absorb some of the excess moisture. You want to rotate this stuff so it can breathe within the container. Each day, let's say, but don't, make sure your hands are clean so we're not introducing excess bacteria, which can hasten the spoilage process. Okay. And then, whether to cut with a stainless steel or plastic knife. I've never used a plastic knife for this sort of thing. I've always used, a typical stainless steel chef's knife for setting up a salad prep for the next couple of days. What I've noticed is that things will oxidize given enough time, and you can use the towel technique and kind of optimize temperature, and you can start to extend shelf life, but give enough time. These lettuce items are going to get kind of a rusty, brown colored. That's the oxidation that's setting in with its the cut or even torn edges exposed to the oxygen in the air, or other components might start to break down because they're so fragile. Okay, so in there is going to be a balance that can work for your situation. And it's going to take a little bit of experimentation, okay, looking at these few factors that I just mentioned to see what combination is going to work best for you, okay? But I am a big fan, I'll say again, of the towel, again, whether it's paper or a cloth towel, just to absorb some of that excess moisture. Glass with a tight lid. Generally speaking, these food items, they're alive, right? So they benefit from some breathing. I prefer some sort of looser fitting a lid. But again, if you're consuming the product quickly enough, then that problem goes away. Okay, so again, there are a number of variables here, and I want you to take notes and to pay attention to what you're doing and what's going on in your refrigerator, and then start to find that balance that works best for you. Okay, thank you. Next up from Pauline. Hello. What's the best way to create nice, even-shaped veggie burgers? So if you want some nice round patties, excuse me a second. If hand, the hand patting method is unsatisfactory to you, then get a ring mold. I guess we call them a ring mold, but it's a ring. Um, Usually made out of stainless steel. That's going to be your culinary sort of grade, better quality product. And you can get them in different diameters depending on what you want. And then you can just lay that down on your surface, cutting board or whatever, and then just pack in, your product, and you're good to go. You can slide that off. You can put a spatula underneath it and move it directly to the pan. Whether you cook this over the on the stovetop, or put on a sheet pan to cook in the oven. You just slide the spatula out and then pull the ring mold off, and you've got this nicely formed patty. Okay. Now it is possible, but depending on the nature of that filling you're using, that can be sticky. In which case, kind of like cutting biscuits, you can dip the this ring mold, in a flour of some sort, just to have a little bit of powder in there that'll help release the product. Okay, but that's the basic approach. Thank you. Hello, Shar. Good to see you again. Where is the best place to store rice? A glass container or in the freezer? So, I think rice can go either in the fridge or the freezer, depending on how soon you intend to use it. If it goes into the fridge, generally, I recommend trying to get to it within, let's say, 5 days. A more general rule of thumb for leftovers is to use it within 7, but rice and some other grains can be very encouraging of spoilage bacteria on their sort of nutrient-rich surface, and hence I like to pull back that window to, let's say, 5 days or so as usually being pretty safe. Now, there are always variables, right? Depends on how you've been handling the product and how clean your hands or your utensils have been in terms of the introduction of spoilage bacteria to the rice or other grain. It can also depend upon, the shelf life can depend upon how warm your refrigerator is, and that can be just based upon the temperature setting. It can be based upon how frequently the door is opened, thus introducing the warmer air from the outside environment. And so all of those things will affect the shelf life of foods, and very much so something like rice. I think glass containers work fine. I use glass containers, and we also have a few plastic containers. Plastic, zip seal bags work well to store rice. For longer term storage, all of this can go into the freezer, and rice, as well as other grains, will store very nicely in the freezer. Like any other leftover item, it should be used within a reasonable amount of time. And I would, just as a general guideline, say, use it up within 2 or 3 months. This idea of freezer burn, right, or excessive drying will start to set in, which permanently alters the texture and the flavor of the product. So if you can use it, before that, which means, first of all, you need an airtight container of some sort, then you can maximize the quality, during that period of time. And then, you bring it from the freezer to the fridge, let that defrost over the next day, sometimes a couple of days. And then you're good to cook with it again. Keep in mind that the overall shelf life, like in the refrigerator, it will be paused when it goes into the freezer. And then when you pull that out from the freezer into the fridge again for thawing and eventual use, that clock resumes again from where it left off. So if it was in there for 5 days already, you put it in the freezer, bring it out, you're starting at a 5-day clock. And, maybe you've got, I don't know, a day or 2, of shelf life, maybe more. Again, it just depends on the variables that we talked about. Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for the question. Bye-bye. All right, next up from Kelly, who says, am I planning on moving to Mexico when I retire? Do you think eating a vegan diet will be easy? And can you give me any tips, given that vegan grocery items such as plant-based dairy may be hard to find? Guys, first of all, congratulations, on your upcoming move to Mexico and retirement. Mexico is one of my favorite places on this planet. I love the people and the food and such a rich history and so much more. So in terms of eating plant-based, it's pretty easy. Certainly there's a lot of meats, within the cuisine, broadly speaking. But there's also, a lot of beans and various legumes, lots and lots of vegetables and fruits these days there are so many vegetables that are grown in Mexico that weren't routinely available 20 and 30 years ago, but just due to I'm going to call it globalization. In this case, it's the global movement, right, of images and knowledge around food and cuisines of other regions of the world that have prompted consumers to call for, certain ingredients and for producers to meet them halfway. So I think that, going all plant-based in Mexico can be done pretty easily. And in terms of plant-based dairy sort of products, they're available. It certainly will depend on where you are, in terms of the variety and the extent. But these sort of things are available in Mexico, and increasingly so, both in the form of imports into Mexico as well as domestically made products. So it's going to be just up to you to check out your local landscape, your foodscape, and determine what's available. All right. Thank you. Alice says, how much protein do we need in our daily diet? Alice, I'm going to give you some really general information here. Okay. And I'm going to start by saying that the guideline is 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Okay. Now, of course, there are variables depending on one's specific health condition and situation. Generally, as one ages, let's say 50 plus, or maybe even before that, a lot of folks will say increase your protein. If your physical activity level is at a particularly high rate due to heavy work that you do, or to athletics, other physical activities, then folks will encourage you to increase your protein intake. More specifically, however, this is really, I think, a conversation between you and your healthcare provider. And I would encourage you to sit down with that person to evaluate your specific situation and what might be best for you. Thank you. And let's see, Rosalba says, for cutting boards other than wood, is plastic okay? Is glass okay? Excuse me just a moment. For cutting boards, plastic is certainly fine. They're very popular. They have been for a long time. There are different types of plastic, and if you're curious, you might take a look at some of these different materials. But otherwise, generally speaking, sure. Plastic provides a surface that's pretty easy to maintain. In terms of cleaning and sanitation. It provides a surface that is firm, but not, in most cases, not too hard, in terms of preserving the cutting edge of your knife. Okay. Glass, on the other hand, is pretty hard. And, glass will start to wear out your blade, in my opinion, prematurely. And if you can, opt for something a little bit softer than glass, then that's going to put you in a good position, I think, of extending the life, right, of the cutting edge, right, of your knives. Okay. Let's see. And David says, I love Chinese and Thai food. I feel that if I can make 5 simple sauces, then I'll have an easier time staying whole food plant based. Do you have any recipes that'll help me? I mean, not off the top of my head, but I will say that if you do a very, I think, quick search, an online search, for Thai sauces or Chinese sauces, you're going to find some options, and you can drill down to each one, and find styles of sauces that suit your palate. Okay, that will suit the type of cooking that you do. Whether it's a peanut sauce, right, or a sweet chili sauce, or something else. Okay. And these sauces will reflect some of the regional cuisines within these countries or broader regions of Asia. But I think it's important that you spend some time and just take a look at the ingredients, and even try them out, to see what's going to suit your palate. And then you can come up with 5 in each category, and keep your enthusiasm up around the plant-based dishes that you prepare. Thank you. All right, Deborah says, when a recipe calls for soaked nuts, as in the cashew cream recipe, are we supposed to measure the nuts before or after they are soaked? The volume changes a lot. Generally speaking, you need to look at the wording in the recipe, and try to understand what the author intended when she or he wrote the recipe. Okay, but I will say that generally speaking, my experience, the measurement that's given is going to be your dry measurement. And then you'll take that, let's say 1 cup of cashews, and then you'll soak it. And they expand to some larger volume, but you'll just continue with the recipe at that point. The good thing with cooking generally is that you can make adjustments along the way. So if it turns out that you thought the recipe meant this, but it seems to actually mean this, and the volumes turn out different, and therefore the finished product has a flavor that's a little bit thin or a little bit strong, then you can make notations on the recipe because you understand it better at that point, and then move forward, by customizing, the details of the preparation. But again, it depends on how the recipe is written, based upon what the author intended. But generally, you're gonna measure the nuts, and then you're gonna go soak them. Okay, thank you. All right, next question is from Emmy, who says, I'm allergic to eggs and milk. I'm taking the bread course right now. Can I use substitutions, or is it better to learn the regular way and not be able to taste it? Emmy, I am going to take this question offline, because it's going to depend upon which class you're in and who the lead instructor is for that class. And it's not me, I know that. And so it might be best that we get you in touch with the lead instructor to give you precise information for you. Okay, so hang tight. Thank you. And Mitch is back. Nice to see you, Mitch. I hope you've been well. Mitch says, I would like to eat more whole grains, but find myself stuck on brown rice, quinoa, and farro. Any suggestions or ideas on how to use other grains in the daily diet? Wow. I take a pretty simple approach. I run into this same sort of thing, Mitch, and so I understand where you're coming from. My approach is pretty simple in that I'll have various grains on hand, or maybe I'll cycle them out over time, and I'll just stick them in there, just interject them in whatever preparation I'm making. So instead of the brown rice, quinoa, or farro, now I'm using millet or something else. And then I get to get used to it at that point, right? Because the cooking is different, the grain to water ratio is different, the cooking time is different. Maybe the finished texture of the grain is stickier than what I was experiencing with this other grain that I was using. And so that might then prompt me to make some tweaks to this particular dish that we're talking about. And so, in that way, I just sort of force myself, I'll say, to, make these adjustments by just sticking in a different grain. I'm one of these people that will eat anything. And so I'm not offended by a different flavor or texture or aroma or look to the food. I'm going to find a way to work with it. But I understand, right? If some folks don't have that sort of, um, I guess, flexibility of the palate, which I'm fortunate to have. And you're going to bump into things, like buckwheat groats, can be very sticky, and they have this sort of a unique earthy quality to them. In which case, I don't you can blend it, bring that in with some quinoa to lighten up the texture. Millet can be quite nice, but if it's cooked with a lot of moisture, it gets very dense and sticky and clumpy. And so, you can start to just play around, with these things. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that sort of answers your questions and provides some inspiration on experimentation. I mean, for me, that's where it is. And yeah, see where this takes you. I find it to be a lot of fun to just look up grains once in a while to try to find something that maybe I've never used, or maybe I haven't used in 20 years. And I'll jump online and order a small package and just tinker with that for a while. And so, in that way, I kind of keep myself fresh in terms of the culinary activity. And I hope you'll do the same. Thank you. Okay, Denise says, can you tell us your favorite Japanese recipes? I love Japanese food. Wow. So, in terms of Japanese food, what I've been doing for the last several years, at least during the school year, is making miso soup in the morning for our son's breakfast. And I mean, that's just one item, but that's a very versatile item. That's also good for you. It's versatile in the sense that obviously you can add different things to it as internal ingredients, but you can also vary the type of miso and the type of dashi that you use. If you're okay using the more typical or traditional Japanese dashi, which is based on bonito, which is a type of tuna fish that's dried and shaved, and then that's simmered along with kombu or kelp. Excuse me. That gives a certain flavor profile. If you take out the bonito, you can find other dried fish varieties that are used for that flavor slot. Okay, so you can introduce variation. You can add more or less kombu. You can eliminate the fish altogether and make just 100% kombu dashi. You can make a shiitake dashi. You can combine those two. There's just different bases that you can use for flavor. And in that way, you can come up with these soups that you might find you like for breakfast, or maybe if you've got some friends coming over, you like it this other way for dinner with these other things that you're serving. So, that's probably my favorite place to introduce some of those comfortable flavors that I grew up with, very simply and in a very enjoyable sort of way, right? Um, when it comes to internal ingredients, there's seasonal vegetables, there's tofu. Tofu, of course, comes in different styles, different firmness, and water contents, and so all of that can add different palate experiences just in this one soup. So I hope you'll give that a try. Thank you. Okay, Linda says, "What are your thoughts on using plant-based prepared packaged foods?" Um, I don't know. I think more importantly, what do you think about it, right? What's your food philosophy, around these things? I will say that I try to use, um, whole ingredients, and I, cut them down or, cook them and, prepare them in some fashion. But, when it comes to, these convenience foods, these prepared foods, um, do they ever end up in the house? Sure. Do I prefer them? No. As I mentioned, I prefer, real fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes and this sort of thing. But that's only based upon, my lifestyle and my value set. And I think, Linda, you really need to think about what it is that's going to be most important to you. Um, we talk about packaged foods, and generally speaking, you'll have some sort of a preservative that goes into there. Not to mention it's processed to some extent or another. You got the packaging, right, and the landfill waste that's associated with that. And so there are these other facets to buying prepared and packaged foods. Whether they're plant-based or otherwise. And so again, I hope you'll take some time to think about, what it is that you want to do. What sort of a footprint do you want to leave behind, each day as you go through your process of cooking. Thank you. Okay, Pauline is back with a question. Pauline writes, "Does Ruby have Asian-inspired cooking courses?" We don't have standalone, Asian cooking courses, but we do have, within some of our courses, a small section that'll get you kind of down this path of a certain type of Asian-inspired cuisine or cooking, or maybe expanding your understanding of ingredients from a particular region. Okay, whether it's Indonesia or Japan or Thailand or India or someplace else. Asia is a huge place, offering all kinds of beautiful subtleties and cuisines as you walk through the countryside, and so you can have a lot of fun with it. But you'll find some of this in our professional plant certification course. Again, it's a small percentage of the overall course, but it kind of gets you in this direction, hopefully to inspire you, right, to tinker with recipes. And, maybe you want to like dive a little bit deeper and even study some of these specific techniques and cooking methods that might be unique to that particular Asian regional cuisine. Another place where you'll find some of this is in our Blue Zones cooking course, which is a course that we put together not that long ago. Maybe I'm going to say a year and a half ago, along with the team at Blue Zones. And it gives you a chance to learn a little bit about these 5 so-called blue zones around the world, where there's a high concentration of folks that reach their 90s and their hundreds. And, it's based upon a number of different lifestyle factors, but food is an important one. And, in that mix is Okinawa. And so we've got a collection of recipes, and some stories that will hopefully inspire you again to introduce these types of foods to your cooking repertoire. Thank you. And the next question, this is from Anu, who says, what is a go-to wheat sourdough bread recipe with non-commercial yeast? I have asked around in bakeries nearby, but they don't give starters. So you're asking for a bread formula, and I don't have that off the top of my head, but let's see. I mean, I've got sourdough bread books here that I reference. I can't think of authors and titles right now, but there's certainly a lot of information online. Okay, and these books that are written by by bakers, they will also walk you through the process of making your own starter. There's also a place, oh boy, online, and they'll mail a starter to you. I think all you have to do is send in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they will, excuse me, they will mail to you, a dried starter that you can then use. And so there are some options out there. Probably if you do a search, you can find these folks that I'm describing. Okay. But otherwise, I mean, a sourdough starter is pretty easy to make. And, you do this with grated apple, into some water. It captures the yeasts and things from the environment, starts this fermentation process, and then you can use that water. You can strain out the fruit and use that inoculated water to make sourdough. So I'm just outlining very simply a procedure that's very simple, okay, to get you started in the world of sourdough. Okay. Let's see. Anu, if you want to reach out to me at support@rouxbe.com, I'd be happy to continue, this conversation with you. And if you want to maybe jot down a couple of three more specific questions, that'll help me focus on a response to you. Okay. Thank you. And then let's see, last up for today, we have a question from Marissa, who says, how can I help my family to eat healthier meals when they want dishes with meat, refined grains, oil, and cheese? I want to start cooking healthier meals, but afraid they won't want to eat them. I would say do it slowly. Okay. One of the most difficult things for anyone to do is to make a pretty big change to their diet immediately. And it leads to stress and frustration and other negative emotions. And that's not what we want, right, around food and cooking. We want to experience the joy of cooking and the joy of a beautiful meal. And it might take a while, right? But just start to introduce beautiful plant-based dishes. Maybe you replace an animal-based dish once in a while, but it needs to taste good. And this is where you come in. Okay. Excuse me. You come to Rouxbe, we're going to walk you through cooking methods and best practices, right, around these food handling techniques. We'll even give you a few recipes to practice with. Okay, and then beyond that, it's going to be up to you to practice, developing and honing those skills as you deepen your knowledge around food and food handling. And all the while, the quality of your cooking is going to improve. And also, try to get your family members in the kitchen to help them prepare meals for you. There's nothing like being invested, personally invested in the outcome of a meal. And, there's a lot to be learned. I mean, after all, not only do we want to provide healthy meals for our families today, but we want to encourage them to continue to eat in this best way well into their own lives, and on whatever path that they might take through life. So have patience and, understand that a lot of times it's an experience of two steps forward and one step back. Um, if you need a little encouragement, you can always write us here at support@rouxbe.com, and we can talk about things. But be patient and serve delicious food, and people cannot say no to that. All right, thank you. And this brings us to the end of today's program. I want to thank each of you for your participation and look forward to seeing you during my next office hours. Thank you.